We flew to Chile in early August. There were four of us: me, Lamb, Tyler, and Chris. We were all around 18 or 19, and it was our first trip without parents after finishing school. We had been saving money for almost a year, working random jobs whenever we could, and eventually bought the cheapest tickets we were able to find. Honestly, we didn't even specifically plan on Chile. We just wanted to end up somewhere far away from home, near the ocean, with no adults around us. We rented a cheap hostel near the beach. The room was tiny, with peeling walls and an old ceiling fan that sounded like it was about to fall apart every night. But we didn't care. We barely stayed inside anyway. During the day, we walked around the city, ate weird local food, bought cheap beer, and stayed on the beach until late at night. The first few days felt perfect. The ocean looked unreal, especially in the evenings when the sun disappeared behind the water and everything turned orange. There was always music playing on the beach. People grilled meat near the shore. Some were surfing, others were dancing outside bars. Tourists were everywhere. Sometimes it honestly felt less like a real place and more like some movie about the perfect vacation. Lamb filmed absolutely everything, literally everything. Tyler accidentally spilling soda all over himself. Chris trying to flirt with girls using terrible Spanish. Us sitting on the hostel roof late at night watching the city lights. Sometimes Lamb would purposely film random people around us, zoom in on their faces, and laugh at their weird expressions. On the second night, we went to the beach after dark. Even that late, there were still groups of people sitting around small fires while someone played guitar nearby. At one point, we walked farther away from everyone else and just sat near the water. The waves were so loud that sometimes they completely drowned out our conversations. That's when Chris first mentioned the canyon. He said he had talked earlier that day to some old local guy near a store. The man barely spoke English, but he kept repeating something about a place in the rocks while pointing farther down the coast. At first, Chris thought he was talking about some normal tourist spot, but then the old man started acting strangely nervous. He kept repeating, "Not after dark." Of course, we laughed about it. Lamb immediately said it sounded like the beginning of a cheap horror movie. Tyler thought the guy was just trying to scare tourists for fun. But I noticed something strange. When Chris asked what exactly was inside the canyon, the old man didn't answer. He just stared toward the ocean and slowly shook his head. The next day, we almost forgot about the conversation. We walked through the local market, ate fried fish near the waterfront, and spent most of the day in the sun. By evening, we got bored. The beach was starting to empty out, the bars were only beginning to open, and none of us wanted to sit inside the hostel. That's when Lamb brought up the canyon again. He said there was still enough time before sunset, and it could be a perfect place to shoot a video. Chris agreed immediately. Tyler didn't really want to go at first, but eventually, he gave in too. We grabbed water bottles, our phones, and started walking down the coast. The farther we got from the city, the quieter everything became. The music from the beach slowly disappeared. There were almost no people left around us. The normal sand turned into black rocks and huge cliffs. Waves crashed violently against the shore while the wind kept getting stronger. After about an hour of walking, the sun was almost gone. The sky had turned dark orange, and the ocean looked nearly black. That's when Chris suddenly stopped and pointed ahead. Between two massive cliffs, there was a narrow opening. From far away, it looked like nothing more than a shadow, but as we got closer, we realized it was a long canyon, stretching deep into the rocks. Cold air was flowing out of it. Not normal cool air, actual freezing cold, like the weather inside was completely different. Lamb immediately smiled and turned his camera on. "This is gonna be so good for the video." I remember staring into the canyon. It was almost completely dark inside. Somewhere deep ahead there was only a faint gray light. The wind coming out of that place was so cold, it instantly gave me chills. And for some reason, that was the exact moment I first wanted to turn around and go back to the beach. But instead, we walked inside. The temperature dropped almost immediately after we entered. Outside, the air had been warm and humid from the ocean, but inside the canyon it felt freezing. The walls were narrow, dark, and covered in wet stone that reflected the tiny amount of light coming from outside. Every sound echoed perfectly. Even our footsteps bounced back at us from somewhere deep ahead. At first, it honestly still felt exciting. Creepy, sure, but fun creepy. Like exploring some hidden place nobody else knew about. Lamb kept filming while making stupid horror movie jokes in a deep voice. Tyler laughed at everything, but I could tell he was getting nervous too. Chris acted completely relaxed, even though he kept glancing deeper into the canyon every couple of seconds. The farther we walked, the quieter everything became. After a while, we couldn't even hear the ocean anymore. That was the first thing that really bothered me. Outside, the waves had been insanely loud. There was no way the sound should have disappeared that quickly. But inside the canyon, there was almost complete silence. Just us breathing, our footsteps, and the dripping sound of water somewhere in the dark. Lamb suddenly shouted, "Hello!" The echo repeated it perfectly. "Hello!" Tyler laughed and yelled, "This place is creepy as hell." Again, the canyon answered, "Creepy as hell." But something about the voice sounded wrong. The words echoed back too clearly, too human, like someone deeper inside the canyon was actually repeating us instead of it being a normal echo. Chris noticed it too. "You guys hear that?" Before anyone answered, Lamb yelled something random again. "Chris smells like garbage." The canyon stayed silent for about 2 seconds. Then from somewhere ahead, a voice answered, "Chris is watching you." Nobody laughed this time. I remember all 4 of us just standing there in silence. Even Lamb lowered the camera for a second. Tyler nervously smiled and said it was probably another tourist messing with us. Honestly, I wanted to believe that too. It sounded way more normal than the alternative. So we kept walking. The deeper we went, the stranger the canyon looked. The walls became tighter and taller, blocking almost all the remaining sunlight above us. In some places, the passage was so narrow, our shoulders nearly touched the rocks on both sides. The air smelled damp, salty, and rotten at the same time. A few minutes later, I noticed something else. Our footsteps weren't the only ones anymore. At first, I thought it was just the echo again, but then I realized the timing was wrong. There was another set of footsteps somewhere ahead of us. Step, 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 matching our rhythm almost perfectly, but slightly delayed, like someone was copying the way we walked. Tyler stopped moving first. The extra footsteps stopped too. Nobody said anything for a few seconds. Then Lamb laughed nervously and shouted, "Hey, who's there?" From deep inside the darkness, his own voice answered back, "Who's there?" Only quieter and closer. I felt my stomach drop instantly. Chris grabbed his phone tighter and turned on the flashlight. The beam shook slightly in his hand as he pointed it deeper into the canyon. At first, there was nothing, just wet stone walls and darkness. Then the light moved slightly to the left, and we saw it. Someone was standing at the far end of the passage. At least, I thought it was a person at first. It was way too tall. Its body looked unnaturally thin, with arms hanging almost to its knees. It stood completely motionless in the center of the canyon, staring directly at us. But the face was the worst part. I still can't explain it correctly. It looked almost human, but not fully. Like something had tried to recreate a human face from memory and missed small details. The eyes were too large, the skin looked too smooth, and the smile. The smile was stretched way too wide across its face. Not emotional, not angry, just wrong. Nobody moved, nobody even breathed for a second. Then Chris slowly raised one hand, and the thing copied him. Exactly. 1 second later, that's when I realized it had been mimicking us the entire time. Not just our voices, everything. Our movements, our posture, the way we walked, the way we breathed. Then it took one slow step forward. Its legs bent strangely when it moved, almost backwards for a split second. Tyler whispered, "Run." Nobody moved. The thing took another step, closer this time, and then another voice suddenly echoed through the canyon, my own voice. "Run." That instantly broke us. Lamb screamed, "Go, go, go!" We turned and started running. The sound behind us exploded almost immediately. Footsteps, dozens of them, not one creature, not two. It sounded like an entire crowd sprinting through the canyon behind us. Our own voices echoed everywhere around us, screaming, laughing, breathing. Some of the voices sounded exactly like us. Others sounded almost correct, but distorted in small ways. The walls around us suddenly felt tighter, darker. I nearly slipped twice on the wet rocks while running. Behind us, something slammed against the canyon wall hard enough to shake the ground. Chris looked back first. The second he did, he screamed louder than I'd ever heard in my life. I turned too. The thing was much closer now, and it no longer looked human at all. Its arms jerked unnaturally while it moved, like broken bones bending under its skin. Its smile stretched wider and wider every second, but the worst part was its face. It was changing, slowly becoming Chris. The eyes, the mouth, the shape of the face, all of it twisting into him. Chris panicked and started running faster, but the rocks beneath him were wet. His foot slipped, and he slammed hard against the ground. Everything after that happened insanely fast. The creature suddenly moved forward in a violent twitch, not running, more like glitching toward him. 1 second it was several meters away, the next second it was directly on top of him. Chris screamed once, just once. Then the sound cut off completely. Lamb grabbed my arm so hard it actually hurt and pulled me forward. Tyler was crying while running beside us, repeating, "Don't look back, don't look back, don't look back." I could still hear movement behind us, heavy movement, wet movement, and sometimes Chris's voice, "Guys, wait." The exit finally appeared ahead of us as a faint orange light. I genuinely thought we were about to make it out. Then we heard footsteps behind us again. Slow, calm, human, and Chris's voice echoed through the canyon one last time. "Guys, why did you leave me?" Lamb turned around first. I wish he hadn't, because walking out of the darkness behind us was Chris. Same clothes, same face, same voice, but something about him was horribly wrong. The way he moved was too smooth, almost floating, and the smile on his face never changed, not even once. His eyes were wide open and completely empty. Then Chris tilted his head slightly and copied Lamb's exact breathing pattern. That was enough for us. We ran out of the canyon without stopping. I don't even remember most of the sprint back to the road. My legs felt numb, my chest burned. Tyler nearly collapsed twice. Eventually, we reached the main road and flagged down an old pickup truck driven by some local man. The second he saw our faces, he immediately unlocked the doors without asking questions. As we drove away, I looked back one final time. The canyon entrance was completely dark, empty, silent, like nothing had ever been there at all. The next morning, the police searched the area for Chris for almost the entire day. They found nothing except his phone near the canyon entrance. The screen was shattered, but the videos were still saved. We watched the final recording together at the station. The footage showed Chris running through the canyon while breathing heavily. The flashlight beam shook violently in his hands as he kept looking behind himself. Then the camera accidentally turned toward him for a split second, and standing directly behind Chris was another Chris, smiling directly into the camera.